Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to the Tuesday, May 5th, 2009 meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. Mr. Kasakian, could you call the roll?
Agency members: Friedman.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Draymond.
Here. And could we hear your report, please?
The agenda for the May 5th, 2009 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, April 30th, 2009 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
And thank you. And our next item is the approval of minutes. We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right. If there are no corrections, then the minutes will stand as submitted. Our next item, Mr. Kasakian.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the redevelopment agency may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision, and the matter may be referred to staff through the executive director for investigation and report.
Okay. Let me just, I have one card, but I don't believe it's meant to be oral communications. I believe it's meant to be on the agenda item. Let me just ask Mr. Rotter. You submitted a card for By Glendale and also oral communications. You want to speak on the By Glendale?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So then I have no cards for oral communication, Mr. Kasakian. So I'll close oral communications. Let's move on to the next item.
On the business agenda at 6A is Director of Development Services regarding By Glendale campaign. At 6A1 is a motion authorizing staff to implement Phase 1 awareness of the By Glendale campaign. And at 2 is a resolution appropriating an amount not to exceed $88,900 to provide funds for the campaign.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to Phil Lansfame.
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, back in March, you had asked staff to put together a campaign for a shop local. We came back to you rather quickly and admittedly didn't have all the kinks worked out. In late March, you asked us to go back and develop a concept for an awareness program, educational on the importance of buying locally, and then to continue to work with merchants groups to try and figure out the promotional end of those things. We are back today to talk to you about the first piece, an awareness campaign throughout Glendale. We, working with the city team, developed a list of themes that we have a diverse economy, that supporting our local economy is important. It supports the jobs and businesses that are owned by our friends, our family, our neighbors, and really stresses the importance of keeping dollars locally to fund jobs, services, and city services as well. We've looked at Exhibit 1 shows you a kind of a branding logo that we've got for the campaign. And then on Exhibit 2 are some concept storyboards that really talk about this message. In meeting with some of the merchants and through surveys that we did online, we listed out a number of different mediums that we would use to convey this message. Print advertisement, cable television, email blasts. There are also things that we can do to leverage that message. In other words, get as many impressions, brand the logo that we have on bus stops and other things. What we've done is on the matrix in the back of your report, we've put together a cost for each of those and have set it up a little bit like a menu so that the agency can pick and choose which of those they would like us to implement. Working with GTV6, we would create 30-second spots. We think that those are probably the most effective use. We can get a broad reach. We would also use print advertising and advertorial to talk about the message. There's the opportunity to do centerpieces, or I learned this the other day, wraps, where you would have something around the outside of the newspaper, the local newspaper, that talks about those things. In the report, we've also listed some ideas that came up in the second phase of this. How would we promote business with whether it's discounts or what have you? What we found is it's very difficult to develop a consensus given the diverse nature of business in Glendale. In other words, we couldn't come up with something for everybody. Most of the programs that are available out there today are geared at a specific geographic location or a specific type of use. we were trying to address the entire area, the entire city, and so we're continuing to work that through and try and develop specific messages that perhaps just promote areas of Glendale or different things in Glendale. Night out on the town type of deal where you would talk about the different restaurants that we have available or geographic locations that you could have, and we've talked about there's a lot to discover in Glendale, could be the tag. So that's generally, you've got the report in front of you, that's generally the campaign, the awareness. We want to go out and make sure that the people in Glendale that live and work here understand the importance of spending locally and keeping our local economy strong, and we would do it through these different vehicles.
Well, why don't you run through them, Mr. Lansfame, just briefly? For example, what is the anticipation with television promotions, both on our own GTV6 and brokered elsewhere, newspaper, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay.
What do you anticipate?
With respect to television spots, we would produce them through GTV6, and to the extent that we could air them on our own cable, we would. We think that through a buy with Charter Communications, we can target the Glendale, Montrose, La Crescenta area and get about 1,100 spots in prime time on Discovery Channel, CNN, and try and use those cable stations to get this message out to a targeted area. In terms of advertising, print advertising, look at local newspapers as well as the foreign language papers to try and really set a media blitz for an intense period of time. Twice weekly, a one-page ad, twice weekly over the first month of the campaign. We could use that in conjunction with a website, and then, as I say, as many times as we can get that logo out, it would remind people of the message that they heard on one of these other vehicles. The costs they vary, and we can move dollars around if we think it's more. In other words, we have about $28,000 for newspaper. If we think that the cable purchase is getting us more coverage, we can shift that over and just do a certain amount, enough to get the word out to those that maybe aren't watching cable in the city of Glendale. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. Well, do any of my colleagues have any comments, questions? Mr. Quintero.
Well, I don't have a real problem with what you've presented, but I've said it multiple times. I'm more interested, I guess, and maybe this is a first step, but I'm interested in a long-term marketing program for Glendale. I think that's where we've failed throughout the years, where we have these intensive outreach and advertising campaigns, and then it all sort of comes to an end. So the economy's in bad enough shape that I think we do need to do something intensive. But then I hope we can move on to a longer-range plan to market Glendale business, retail and others, services, etc. That's one point. The second point is that in addition to the buy local concept, which I think is a good idea to sort of remind people, I think people tend to do that naturally. The second point is I'm much or just as interested in marketing to Eagle Rock, to Los Feliz, to Atwater, Silver Lake, Tahunga, etc. I mean, I think those surrounding areas, surrounding neighborhoods are the ones that sort of need to be brought to Glendale. And so I hope that's the next step that we take, to go to the surrounding communities that probably shop in Glendale anyway and just kind of increase our visibility and try to appeal to those neighborhoods. And I mentioned Tahunga, Sunland, et cetera, because I think the natural shopping area there would be Foothill Boulevard, La Crescenta, and Montrose.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, are you asking for comments now on this whole package, or for specific questions?
I'm asking if any of the agency members have any questions of Mr. Lansfame or his staff with regard to what has been presented in our packet or presented verbally, and then any questions or comments before we hear our speaker, and then we'll come back again.
I do have a question. In terms of this shopping list of possible places to spend our dollars, do you have any research of what's been effective for other cities and what hasn't in terms of the delivery methods? Like, do we know if television's more effective than print, or what kind of print? Have you looked at any of that data?
We don't. We can narrow down, not narrow down. We can identify the reach of each. In other words, I think, where was it? We know, for instance, if we send a direct mailer, we're reaching X number of households. Whether they read that card and are compelled to shop there, that we don't know. We know that we can get 1,100 spots over a 3 to 6 month period on cable, and we don't have the follow-up survey that once people have seen that, are they compelled to shop?
Okay. So I'll have comments later, but all questions.
Very good. Mr. City Manager.
Well, I'm just noting it. I think from the comment, it might be a good idea to survey some communities that have ongoing marketing programs and see what they have found the most effective. Thousand Oaks, for example, seems to have an ongoing marketing program. See where they have found it most effective in their reach, whether local or outside.
Well, let me just react to that. That would be helpful, but it would be even more helpful if we find out for them exactly what they were promoting. Mm-hmm. Were they promoting, say, Thousand Oaks as a city, or are they presenting it various retail venues within their city? Because that's what we're talking about here.
Right.
As I understand it, we're talking about presenting not just the downtown area, not just Galleria and Americana, but we're talking about, we're talking about Adams Square, Brand Boulevard of Cars, and of course, Brand, Kenneth Village, the Foothill Corridor in La Crescenta, Montrose area, Spar Heights, etc., as venues. So I'm not sure that, for example, if we picked a city like Thousand Oaks, that's exactly what they're doing. So looking at their measured results and trying to extrapolate it to what we're talking about here may not be directly analogous. Phil?
Mr. Chairman, to follow up on that and maybe to address Mr. Quintero a little bit, if we were to do spots, and something that we'd suggested, spots on each of the individual merchants associations and recognize geographic areas, we would, number one, work with that area. What is the message that you want to put out about your destination? But then second, ask them to follow up. How did you hear about it? How effective are those spots with their own customers? We've done it informally in past efforts, and it's sometimes a hit and miss, but if we can really focus in and ask them, make a conscious effort to find out if they're effective, we could stay in touch with each of those associations to see how effective it is.
Well, and the follow-up is that if you were to ask merchants, business owners in, say, Adams Square, they're more likely to tell you that their base of shoppers is coming from, some of the areas that Mr. Quintero is talking about. Other areas, it might be Atwater, it may be Silver Lake, it may be Los Feliz, etc. If you ask people in La Crescenta or Montrose, they're going to tell you it's Santa Clarita, Valencia, and certain other places. So, or South Pasadena or San Marino. So it is going to vary terrifically geographically within the city. In terms of direct mail, for example, I'm not sure that I am convinced that is something the city can do for these different geographic venues, neighborhood business districts, for example. I think that the cable advertising and the aspect of a generalized, centralized website as a portal to get to, not just I don't mean a link. I mean an actual an area for each of these venues. I'm very anxious to see this city, for once, it has never done this that I know of, to actually promote its retail venues throughout this city as destinations. They are uniquely different, and they each provide a shopping experience and a dining experience that is different. They each have a different flavor. Kenneth Village is not Spar Heights, and so on. So, Mr. Weaver, anything at this point? Okay, and Mr. Najarian, anything at this point?
Not at this point.
Okay, let's go to our speaker, and then we'll come back. Mr. Rotter, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was here about 5 or 6
You
weeks
can
ago.
state your name for the record.
Oh, my name is Joseph Rotter.
Thank you.
American Loyalty Card is my company. A few weeks ago, I was here and offered one method of addressing what you people are talking about. And it was in response to the fact that somebody was suggesting that maybe some kind of a loyalty card would be of interest to the city. And since we have a loyalty card that's a little bit different from all the other loyalty cards, I thought that that might be something. And I was challenged at the time and asked if I had talked to some of the merchants associations or the chamber. And I had said at the time that I had gotten a very cold shoulder from both. As a response, the Merchants Association of Brand was kind enough to invite me to address their meeting. I'm not sure if this was a joke or if it was serious, but I went there, and out of 8 people, 2 merchants and 7 or 8 other people that were there who were all either city or government employees. Nobody from the Merchants Association who are merchants was there. The only lady that was there was here last time also when I was here. She's a masseuse, and she just doesn't want to share her take with anybody. She doesn't want to advertise, and she doesn't want to do anything that is in any way at all community-oriented. That's okay. In answer to some of the questions that just came up, we have over 120 merchants that already signed up with us that are willing to give up 10% of their take just to get new customers. So when somebody says, well, you don't know if they want to give up 10% in such a bad economy, I can tell you that I have signed on paper people that will say, give me a customer, I'll give them 10% off. So there isn't any issue here in terms of money. The customers, the merchants are looking for customers. The merchants would like to survive. Now, the last thing I would like to address is I think that everybody's putting the onus on the wrong end of the horse. We need to deal with the merchants, not with the customers. If the merchants are offering a good deal, the customers will come. The old saying about build it and they will show up, or they'll come, is true, especially when you're talking about business. Let the customers know that the merchants are giving them a special deal, and the customer will show up. If eBay didn't have that, and if Google didn't have that, and if some of these other on the internet didn't have that, they wouldn't survive. The reason that they're making such enormous amounts of money on the internet is because they have a good deal for the customer. The merchants are out there saying, come to me and I'll make a good deal for you. And what we're offering with our loyalty card is a 2-phased item. The merchants will make more money and the customer will get a discount. And I'm getting almost no real response. I had an hour and a half. Thank you. I had almost an hour and a half discussion with the organization. And at the end of it, one question was asked, which indicated to me that for whatever reason, I didn't communicate clear enough because they didn't understand what I was talking about. And when I offered to give them more time and maybe go over the program with them or over the spreadsheets with them, I was told, no, we can take care of that. And I've never heard from anybody again. So I don't know whether this is, whether I'm splashing hot water on cold water on a hot stove or what. But we have a program that can help. We have a program that will give the merchants a reason to participate and will give the customer a reason to stay in town. We'd like to help.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rotter.
Thank you.
All right, that is our only speaker on this particular go-round. So now let me go back to my colleagues. I'll start with Mr. Weaver this time, if he would like to.
Well, I probably will be the only one speaking the way I am. I don't care for the program. I think most of the people in this city are aware of the city, where most of them either spend their money in Glendale shopping or eating, especially in this economy where getting in a car and driving to other cities is a lot more expensive proposition before. More families are eating at home. I just don't see where it works. The people, Montrose area know very well the Montrose area, and they go down to Honolulu. They come from the areas that you mentioned, Mr. Draymond. The Adams Hill people go down to Adams Square. Kenneth Village serves Kenneth Village. I just think it's unlikely that you're going to be able to convince people from other cities to drive clear over to Pasadena to go to these half-block, one-block business districts. The only real viable one is Montrose, and there are a series of events there that draw thousands of people. If you want to talk about marketing, Glendale, Rick Caruso with the Americana does more marketing for Glendale than I've seen in years. Gigi's Market, my gosh, it's marketed all over the region. My family's been down there 3 weeks in a row now, and are running into people that have come from 20, 30 miles away because Caruso is marketing that far away. I don't know what he's spending, but maybe we ought to be talking to him, finding out what his marketing strategy is. Because it's not always just about the Americana, he talks about Glendale. As far as creating awareness, over the years we've had awareness programs on being sure to watch both ways when you're going in the crosswalks, and people still get hit. We've had awareness programs on speeding, and people still speed. We have awareness programs on littering, and people still litter. You go on, trying to make people aware that they should be spending their money in Glendale, which they probably already are, just doesn't seem the way to go, especially in this economy. Trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip today just doesn't seem the right thing. In a more growth period of our history, and you want to believe in Buffett, that we're at the bottom. In 2-3 years, the economy turn around, and it'll be a different city, more development. We have the Alex. That's going to do better and better. The Americana's going to do better. Galleria, I don't know how much marketing they do. I don't see where they do many things to attract people in. Galleria is the Galleria. Since General Growth controls from Chicago, Illinois, I don't know they're doing that much to promote people to come in. They live on their reputation as one of the top malls in Southern California. So Forest Lawn doesn't need any advertising. We've got enough bodies in there already.
They're dying to get in.
They're dying to get in, yeah, that's right. The one thing I do know, we in this town, it's been written in the press. I used to go to Circuit City and others for electronic goods. Now I have to go to L.A. to Best Buys. That's an element here that would keep even more people here spending. So a long-term marketing strategy, like Mr. Quintero says, makes sense at the right time, but trying to make Glendale people aware that they should spend their money in Glendale, I don't think that's really necessary. We have a 10% unemployment rate here, so who are you going to reach? So that's my own take. I know it isn't a popular opinion in the committee maybe or in the council, but that's just how I happen to feel. So I won't be supporting this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Najarian, we haven't heard from you yet.
I have some questions, Phil. Let's assume we have a $100,000 budget. What type of increase in sales would be required for our sales tax revenue to meet that? So we get 1% essentially, correct, of our sales tax. So a $100,000 budget would require a $10 million increase. Is that something that's even measurable, number one, everything else being equal? And if it is measurable, is it something that's reasonable in terms of increase in sales? And let me give you this other point.
Part two.
Is the only test what it would return to the city in terms of sales tax, or is it also a stimulus for the? Do we see it as a stimulus for the individual retailers and service providers that would otherwise benefit?
Let me answer the last two first. Is it reasonable, and is it the only thing? It may generate $10 million. You may also find that it helps the erosion. So while you're not getting net new, you perhaps aren't losing something that you might otherwise. Going now to your first question, is it measurable? That's always been the difficult part of economic development for us with the type of budget that we have. To do something, to measure something like that, might cost as much as the program itself and then some. So we've always had this difficulty in really pinpointing that the most effective means for us is if we were to create a campaign, say where we start to market the different geographical areas, and then really stay in touch with that merchant group, tell us what it's actually doing. That's probably the best measurement that we would get, as opposed to looking at a sales tax report that comes in quarterly. Say we do this for a month. That's not going to come in there will be 2 more months in that quarter. We're never going to be able to pin this sales increase came to that, unless we do it over a prolonged period of time and we see a spike and then a drop after we stop. And we would track all that, but again, it's really hard to pinpoint the exact sales. And we would need to stay close to each of those merchant groups that we would be promoting as a destination venue.
How did our previous efforts at the Brand Boulevard of Cars with the police chief and fire chief work out? Is there any way to measure that at all? Have we heard from, the economy was fluctuating and perhaps on its way down, but is there any sense that we have as to how successful that was?
We didn't know exactly how successful. We had anecdotally the dealers telling us that it was helpful. The best experience we had was this is maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago. We worked with the auto dealers on a campaign that we supplemented what they were doing in advertising, and you saw a spike. And then when the program ended, they leveled off. You could deduce that it was from that additional amount, and that's the auto dealers attributed it to that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The auto dealers attributed it to that extra support. But again, we didn't have the tag that says, once you see this commercial, call this number and get a free gift, so we know that somebody saw it. Or once you buy the car, there's a card that comes back to us. We didn't do anything like that, which is typical when you are measuring the effectiveness of those kind of campaigns.
Is there a best practices in this arena of community advertising and community promotion? Is there a model out there that, you mentioned Thousand Oaks, is there something out there that we can point to and say it has worked in this community, we should model our efforts close to what they've done?
There are several models, and they are all based on what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to achieve the education of a community to say, here's why it's important to shop local, there are things you can do, and as Mr. Weaver said, we've had many of those campaigns, and we can gauge the effectiveness of that. If your purpose is to attract people and promote yourselves, destinations within your city, you can do that on any one of these media, and cable. My recommendation would be cable and print in association with a website, because the website allows us a lot of flexibility. But then we need to follow up and stay close to those people that we're promoting and say, how effective has it been?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Najarian. Let me go to Laura Friedman.
Well, first, I appreciate the attempt to reach out and to help the merchants in the city, and I think that everybody agrees that that's a very laudable goal. I will confess to being somebody who, while I do spend a lot of time in Glendale, I occasionally leave the city and go other places. Yeah, I go to Pasadena sometimes to go out. I go to Atwater. I go to Santa Monica. So I've been thinking this last week, what makes me go to those cities? I can't remember ever seeing an ad, any kind of an advertisement, television or print, for Pasadena or for Atwater or for Santa Monica. The reason that I go is because Pasadena has an art movie theater. Santa Monica has Bergamot Station and other open gallery nights that draw huge amounts of people. Atwater also has open gallery nights, great little boutiques. When I think of what you'd be saying to people by running an ad in Sherman Oaks, to say to them, come to Glendale because we have a Banana Republic at the Galleria, or come here because we have a farmer's market, well, they have all those things. If you really want to bring people from other parts of the city and to bring people out onto the streets where they're walking past a store they've never seen before, maybe we'll walk in, to me it's really about having events and services that people want to attend. If you want people to come and to park on Brand and to shop up and down Brand as opposed to whatever retail neighborhood they happen to live next to, I think the best place to put your focus is on making a really pleasant shopping environment. Whether it's transportation up and down Brand that's easy and looks nice and people can hop on and hop off, or whether it's having events like the new farmers market at the Americana, which I think will go a long way to bringing people from the whole area into the city at a time when they might not normally be shopping. I think it's those types of events that really bring people in more than advertising. Would I feel comfortable approving $90,000 in what's essentially junk mail to our residents? No, I would never vote for that. Would I, if we could come up with some really killer television commercials that we thought would get people to Glendale, if we had something to promote for them? Maybe, depending on what you're planning on promoting and how that campaign works, to go on charter television. Just to say to them, come to Glendale, I don't see what the draw is. I mean, when you're watching all those ads all day long, why would that bring somebody into this city from somewhere else unless you have something specific you're promoting? Rick Caruso does that with the Americana because he has a product that he's selling that's different from what they can get in Hollywood or what they can get in Sherman Oaks. And people will come here for that because they want that product. So if you show me what the product is in each of those places and how you're going to bring people, maybe I'd consider it. But from the storyboards of just people saying, hey, Glendale's a nice place, well, other people, they're living in nice places too. So why are they going to get in their cars and drive across town? So that's about the sort of bringing people in from the outside. In terms of getting people who are here to spend their money locally, maybe it doesn't hurt to remind them that if they spend their money locally, it goes into our schools and it goes into our public transportation. But in a way, you could say we're doing that right now. We're having that conversation. We're on GTV6. People are getting that message. Maybe the news press will cover this. They'll get the message again. How far beyond that do we need to go? I'm not sure. I just feel like if we're counting on really promoting our city and making people stay and spend money here instead of driving to Pasadena or other places, I think we'd be better served spending the money on events, on special events, on making better shopping environments, on all of those things that go beyond just running an ad. People are bombarded by advertisements all day, but why will they drive across town? Because it has a product they want. So let's concentrate on that. Let's concentrate on creating a product as a city that makes people want to stay here and spend money here and live here.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Weaver has another comment.
Yeah, Mr. Freeman triggered a couple things. Look at the crowds that show up for Love Ride, Cruise Night. It's something that other cities, a lot of cities don't have. But they come here in the thousands because of the product, what is being presented, they like. But one thing I've always wondered, to this day, for years, I cannot understand it. We have a Glendale News Press that is hanging on by a thread. Go to Pasadena, what do they have? 2 Pasadena full-time newspapers. They have the Pasadena magazine that is sent to all of us over here, glossy, thick magazine. They have the Pasadena Weekly. They have all these ways that they promote their own community. And I guess it's all done by the private sector. Why don't we have anything? We have one skinny little newspaper. I always wondered how Pasadena does what they do. Is the community wealthy enough to be able to get people to put together these massive Pasadena magazine? We all get it. It's glossy, thick, advertising everything in Pasadena, restaurants, whatever. I don't know what the distribution on that is, too. It must be quite wide. So it's a question mark. I don't know how they do it, and we can't do anything. We don't even have a one-page sheet that somebody in the community sends around.
Okay.
One last comment.
Sure.
I meant to add, I was sat down with someone from the Arts and Culture Commission the other day, and they told me that for their opening for the Man's Inhumanity to Man exhibit they're doing at the Brand Library, which was a terrific exhibit and event, they had over 1,000 people that night at the Brand Library to see that. And he said by the end of the night that he was getting dozens of people coming up to him and saying, "Hey, I'm not from Glendale. Where can I go have dinner right now?" And I really think that it's those kinds of, it just reinforces that it's really those sorts of events that create a sense of excitement and bring people in from other areas. I don't need data on it. You can see it in any special event, anything that's successful at the Alex, anything that's successful in an art gallery, a farmer's market, all of those types of things. So.
Mr. Weaver.
That triggered another one, what you just said. How many times have we gone, usually out of town on vacation stuff, and you're staying in a hotel or motel, and you go down, there's a whole board set up with little slots, and you can pull out of there menus of restaurants on little fold-up sheets listing all the stuff I do whenever I go out of town place. I pull out, oh, look at this restaurant. Maybe we ought to try it. There's nothing in the Glendale Hilton, the Embassy Suites, that show the different restaurants and venues on brand or anything. Why can't we have these even in some of our own establishments? I'd be willing to vote to spend some money creating those, putting them around City Hall, wherever. People come, they can pick those up and see where the different venues are for, like the Americana, the Galleria, restaurants. It's another thought.
Okay. Mr. Quinter.
Well, once again, I'd like to see a long-term advertising marketing plan for the city, and I'm not sure this is it. But on the other hand, when an economy is going down, I don't think you do the merchants any harm by advertising on their behalf. But I do think whatever we come up with does have to be sort of neighborhood by neighborhood. I think that's a good way to have buy-in from all the business organizations across the city. In terms of events, absolutely, that's how you draw crowds, no matter where you are in Southern California. If there's an event, there'll be literally thousands of people that show up. People are hungry for something different, something to go to. So I think we should put that on the work plan.
Okay. Well, I disagree with my colleagues. I agree that public events, and probably, Phil, you're going to be surprised to hear what I'm going to say. Public events are wonderful things. I've probably produced more public events in this city than, well, certainly anybody on this dais, but probably most people in our city. And there are more public events that are done in Montrose than any other area of the city. However, they are good draws, but they don't feed the city as a whole. And so my question then becomes, what public events are you going to produce throughout the city? And can we afford to do them? And I think when you get into it, you're going to discover the answer is you can't afford to do them. That's why we have, as most cities do, organizations throughout the city that produce public events. Adams Square produces a summer event. Kenneth Village produces a couple of events. Montrose, through a variety of organizations, representative in the back from not Montrose, but from the Crescenta Valley, they do a public event. In Montrose, there's a half dozen or more. As a matter of fact, they produce the largest public event in the city in Montrose. In the downtown area, you have Cruise Night and last year Unity Fest, etc. Yes, you do Cruise Night. It does generate, as Mr. Weaver and Ms. Friedman are saying, does generate attendance to the downtown area, and the local businesses there benefit from it, but they're not getting in their car and driving to Kenneth Village, and that's the problem. This, by Glendale, I don't see this as being a mutually exclusive thing. If the city wants to help retail areas, neighborhood business districts, retail venues throughout our city produce public events to stimulate attendance there, fine. But my understanding of what Buy Glendale and this campaign was about was to stimulate retail activity. Two issues. Two goals. One is to stimulate retail activity throughout all the geographic areas of the city. And secondly, to encourage people, to remind people who live in our city and who currently shop here to continue to do so now more than ever. To answer Mr. Weaver, Arroyo is a publication here. Verdugo is another publication here, both published by the same people that published the Slick magazine you were talking about in Pasadena. Glendale News Press, the CV Sun, the La Cañada Sun, and the Glendale Focus are just some of the publications that are printed regularly in the city of Glendale. But not to mention a whole lot of websites that are very interesting, like Tropico Station and others. In any case, or blogs, I should say. In any case, the thing we're promoting with regard to retail, or the things we are promoting with regard to retail, are, in my view, the diverse venues that we have here that other cities do not. We have, and this city happens to be blessed with 5 or so very unique retail venues, historic venues that other cities don't possess. And this city has never undertaken the process of promoting them in any way, shape, or form. Your department, Phil, more than others, works with those individual neighborhood business districts, that's the real term for them, in a variety of ways to help them to facilitate things they are already doing on their own. For example, Jackie Bartlow will attend merchant meetings throughout the city and helps facilitate the activities they're already working on. But there has never been a program that is promoted via cable, print. By the way, my priority would be cable, radio, and print. What we have to offer here in Glendale. So no, it's not just doing advertising that says, come to Glendale and buy stuff. It is promoting what it is we do have to offer. Let me give you an example of my experience with some of this. The Montrose Shopping Park Association, as you know, I used to be the president of that group, produces the Montrose Arts and Crafts Festival. It is the 3rd largest event of its type in the state of California, and it also, coincidentally, happens to be the 3rd oldest in the state. And after 25 years of doing this, we still get phone, and it's advertised broadly. However, every year, phone calls still come in from the heart of the city, people living right here in Glendale that say, where's Montrose? And we have to explain to them not only where it is, but how to find it and how you drive there. And that is not uncommon. If Glendale is not an impulsive city, and Mr. Weaver, you're another native, you know what Glendalians are like. We tend to stick in our own backyards, and Ms. Friedman, you are far more adventurous, I suspect, than the average Glendalian. And like you, I do travel out of the city every week to explore other areas of LA County and so on. Whether it's restaurant, and I am also attracted to a lot of those venues. I'm not sure that the majority of Glendalians are. However, I do believe that if we're going to do this kind of promotion, it's not just shop in Glendale. It is, we have unique things to offer here, and we do. We do. The reason I mentioned cable and radio is because I think radio is another area that is extremely effective. If you or your staff wanted to talk to me separately about my experiences in administrating a mall that has 216 stores, I'd be happy to tell you what our budget was, what we chose to do, how the merchandising goes on there. And I'm sure that people who have done the same in other retail venues in the city would be happy to do that. And then there are the chambers and so on that can tell you, and other merchants associations. So I want to address one other thing, and that was the loyalty cards that Mr. Rotter mentioned. And it goes along with something that agency member Friedman was talking about. Like Ms. Friedman, I am not interested in direct mail, as I said before. It's not just because we're sending quote, junk mail out. It's because I'm not sure from the city standpoint, we know where to help or how to help send a direct mail out for a store on Foothill Boulevard versus a store, or a business on Lake, let's say, or in Adams Square. And I don't think that our job is specifically to replace the advertising in these business districts. I think it is to promote Glendale by using our venues and the things we have that are in Glendale that are special that we can offer. So many of the things on this shopping list, so to speak, are things that I don't think are particularly great ways to spend money. Print advertising, I agree. That's one area. Television is another. I would add radio to that, perhaps. I don't see email marketing as a way for the city to go with that, for the same reasons I expressed related to direct mail. Light pole banners, I think these, again, are things that those entities need to do on their own. Their printing, and then we come to loyalty cards. And, Mr. Rotter, I don't have any doubt that your product and other products similar to yours are effective in certain ways and certain applications. I just don't think that's what the city should be spending its money on, is a loyalty, is for city dollars to be going into your loyalty card. And I don't mean just yours, I mean loyalty cards in general. I see Buy Glendale as a program that promotes our city. It shows it off to its best advantage and tells people why they should come here. And I don't think loyalty cards are that particular product. Truck side panel ads and Beeline bus ads and bus shelter ads, I don't know, perhaps, but I don't view any of those as the key ways to go. So I think I agree with agency member Friedman, and I think she's been the only one so far that has expressed specific priorities, if you will, with regard to some of the things on this list. And I also agree with agency member Quintero when he's talking about making this an ongoing program. So, Mr. Weaver, you had another thing you wanted to add?
No, I think I had.
Sorry.
I think I added everything.
Mr. Quintero, Ms. Friedman, Mr. Najarian, anything?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if then I can summarize maybe what I heard, I think the agency is, maybe with one exception, the agency is interested in a long-term program that promotes Glendale both within and outside the city. And perhaps we use our retail venues, our geographic venues as the selling point. Look what we have to offer. And we work with those districts to hone the message, and we can perhaps produce spots that go on cable, print ads, and radio ads, and we can do the other type of editorial things, keeping in touch with the news press and others, the CV Sun. I'm not as clear on the By Glendale, the awareness program. I've heard it can't hurt. Probably isn't. People are already shopping here. So I'm not sure if you want us to pursue that particular piece or, just jump in with both feet and transfer our focus to a larger program that promotes all of Glendale using our specific venues as the attraction.
Let me see if I can get you some answers on that or some direction on that, Mr. Lanzafame. Let me go down the line, start with Mr. Weaver and work my way to the right here.
As I stated, I'm not ready to do this at this time.
Okay. Mr. Quintero, then the question, by the way, again, is direction on the portion of this that relates to encouraging our current folks to, buy Glendale, shop Glendale.
Yeah, I think I would prefer the larger program focusing on the individual neighborhood business shopping district. And let me add one more thing. In terms of events, I don't mean that we have to close Brand Boulevard down every time we're going to do an event. There are appropriate events for arts that can be done around the Alex, or I don't know, I'm not a marketer, but just different things that might appeal to different groups of people, but to be doing it on a regular basis.
Ms. Friedman.
I agree with that sentiment, exactly. It doesn't have to be a huge blowout blockbuster kind of thing, but just putting some focus on creating a sense of excitement from month to month throughout the city, I think would really serve the merchants well and serve the residents well. They'd have something, things to do. I'm not so keen on the By Glendale idea because I think right now to focus so much attention on kind of pushing retail, it's just not the right time for that. I think if we're going to sell the city, we sell the city. And I think that what I'd like to see is either a storyboard or a spot. Let's see one of the spots, see if it's something that we're looking for, and then decide if it's something that we would air just locally on cable. Is it so incredibly wonderful that we want to, do a buy in Los Angeles and Burbank? I think that until we actually see what we can come up with, it's going to be hard to know. But having come from the entertainment industry, my preference would certainly be if we're going to spend dollars, to spend it on television advertising with a very minimal amount of print, maybe, and no direct mailers. And radio's fine too. I just think that you get a lot more bang for your buck on television than you do anywhere else in terms of advertising. But it's going to come down to those spots. I mean, if they look like local ads, they're not going to be nearly as effective as something that looks like a well-crafted kind of campaign that really makes people want to get in their cars and visit the city.
Mr. Najarian.
Well, I'm hearing different things. I'm not sure what I should comment on. Number one, I think, is the
Well, specifically, just to
type
help
of medium.
clarify, one of the questions that, aside from anything else you want to say, Mr. Lanzafame is looking for some clarification and direction with regard to the what I guess we're calling a smaller component now, which is the shop local promotion of the folks that live here, shop here already, versus a larger program that promotes venues throughout the city. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I do support the shop local, the smaller program. I do support a television and perhaps radio media advertisement. In terms of creating events, I think we sort of wandered into creating events and that it's a good thing. I'm not sure if we're asking you to do that, to come up with unique events that would bring people to either Kenneth Village or to downtown. Is that one of the things that we're giving direction on in terms of?
Well, it's not something that's on the list, but I think that, yes, Mr. Lansbury.
I was just going to say, I know I remember Mr. Quintero saying this several times, and we've taken it to heart. We talked to several people, and we're involved in several events. The most recent was the 10K run or 5K run downtown, where we had the downtown dash, where we had the boot camp. Those were supported by the redevelopment agency. We're always looking for those opportunities to have events. You could tell us that direction again, but it is a direction we're already taking. Wherever we have the opportunity and it makes sense, we're trying to do that just to attract more foot traffic.
And
We're supportive of all the areas that want to do events.
you come to us on a event by event.
If it's a large event like cruise night, we've done that, and now it's traditional. There are times where we will be asked to help sponsor an event. I think we paid some fees to allow the chess park to be used as the boot camp. It was under $1,000, and we didn't come back to the agency. We took your direction to be supporting those types of events and encouraging those types of events. So if it's a big event, we'll bring that back to you. If it's something like that, we do that on the authority that or direction you've already given us.
I want to go back to the core issue of informing the residents of Glendale that it makes a difference to the city and to our retailers to shop in the city. Many people, aside from not knowing where any particular event is going to be located, but a lot of people just don't get it, that if you buy your car, if you're going to start looking for vehicles, as an example, start at the Brand Boulevard of Cars, give our dealers a chance to make that sale, and then it will provide benefits. I was explaining this to someone else, and why should I shop in Glendale? Why does it matter if car sales are down? How does that affect the city budget? And a lot don't understand that, well, we get 1% of every sale. So when you buy your, whatever, $50,000 car or $40,000 car, we get 1% of that sales tax, as sales tax, back to the city. So that education, along with encouraging people to patronize our retailers, I think is definitely where I'm at. So that's my core, very strong support. Anything else on top of that, I'm certainly willing to consider, but I'm strongly supporting that initial focus on shopping locally, educating the public through television, through any other media that is supported by my colleagues here. And this is an ongoing process. Mr. Quintero mentioned that, and we need to. There's going to be a lot of learning on our part as to what particular type of advertisement and self-promotion works, not just in the city, but in particular areas of the city. So I'm all for that. Come back with a trimmed down budget in terms of many of the things that I heard consensus on that we were not in favor of, such as the junk mail and anything else like that. But let's make this advertising dollars and promotional money really focused and make it work.
Mr. Lanzafame, since all we're really talking about here is some consensus for you to have direction, I will join agency member Najarian in his call to retain the element of by Glendale, the important to get across to our residents and our existing shoppers the importance of shopping here, the importance of community with regard to that. I do, however, believe that it is the smaller of the components. It sounds like you have two members. Well, Mr. Weaver has already expressed his desire that he not go forward with this, so I don't mean to exclude you. I'm just referring to the other four that would like to see that either downplayed or to some greater degree, and you have two that would like to see it retained. I agree with eliminating some of these other items, but I don't agree with trimming the budget down to do it. I say put the money into the other areas and make this a promotion that is meaningful. I also absolutely agree with Agency Member Friedman that we don't have to jump in with a ad campaign of 16 ads to run in